So tonight we're going to talk about the divine laws, and this is from which are eternal and unchangeable, and which is based on the book, the Spirit's book. There is the part 3, it talks all about the divine laws, and the questions are from 614 to 892. So there are lots of questions about this topic, divine laws. And here, the agenda, so we're going to talk through all of them. So we have law of worship, law of work, reproduction, preservation, destruction, social law, progress, equality, liberty, and the law of justice, love, and charity. And we will learn this is like the most important one because it encompasses all of the other laws. So there's a lot of information from the book. The idea is try to not cover every single aspect, but like highlight the important information like we need to know about these laws. But before we start, there's important notice here. So the idea is that we learn about these laws for our inner transformation. The idea is not to point to our fingers to the other person, say, you know, I learned this is how it should be. So this is the notice, it's for us, it's not for the others, right? And using this knowledge against our neighbors is contrary to divine law, so let's not do it. And just as an introduction, I'll just talk a little bit about the revelation, so where those divine laws come from, right? So some people may ask, so we know, like from the Bible and from religion, that the first revelation, we have the 10 Commandments that was received by Moses, and then Jesus came after that, which we consider the second revelation, and he brought the law of love and love your enemies. So he came and he taught us that, but he said, I didn't come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. So every time there is like a new, like a high spiritual, high spirits, it's not to defy the laws, it's just to aggregate. So the same idea with the third revelation, which this one we're going to talk about, the Spirit's teachings. So again, they have not come to defy the Christian principles, but to help to carry them out. So we're not going to talk anything against Christian principles. So divine laws, also called natural laws, so the laws of nature, right? It's the same thing, because God created all of them. They are perfect and unchangeable, like God. So God doesn't make mistakes. That's He's perfect, right? Or it's perfect. And why do we have these laws? So they are for our own good and happiness. Because when we follow the laws, when we know about them, then we're really happy. But if we don't follow, then that's when we really suffer. So that's why it's good to know the law. So it's a guide for our life. That's how I interpret it. It's really like a guide how to live our lives. And the divine laws can be divided in two kinds. There are the physical laws, which are studied by science, like law of gravity, for example, law of action and reaction. But those are, so they regulate movements and relations of matter. So they are also divine laws. But we're going to focus on the moral laws. Those concern like the human relations to the self, to God, and to others. And also they govern both life of the soul and our attitude toward others. So that's going to be the focus tonight, and that's also what the Spirit's book brings to us, those ones. So the first one is the law of worship. So do you think God needs to be worshipped? Mm-hmm. So again, the law is not for God. It doesn't need, us to worship is. But it's really for us. So this feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for the divine being, this is worship. So the purpose is really for us, so we are connected to God. We remember of God. We draw ourselves closer to the source of life, and that's better for us. It's better when we are connected. And also in the book, it explains that this is an inborn feeling, so it's something that comes with us. It's a belief, and the vast majority of people feel there is a supreme being, so it's not something invented. But the true worship, it's in the heart. It's in our intentions. It's not something we do so it looks nice and it's all it's for social. It's a social event. That's not true worship. God doesn't need ceremonies nor rituals. Those are not required. Although it's okay if you feel like doing some ritual, it helps you to connect to God. Yeah, go ahead and do it. It's not a problem at all. But just the idea is, what is the intention when you are doing the ceremony? Do you want to show off to other people, or because everybody does it, that's why you do it? Or it's because it really makes you connect to God? So just like the intention, it's really important. Also, another way to honor God is help the poor and afflicted. God doesn't want us to be somewhere on a rock, contemplating everything and not doing anything. Really just showing, helping each other. This is how we honor God. And then here there's a sentence: if you claim to love God but are self-centered, envious, unkind, unforgiving, and greedy, you are just religious with your lips, right? So not with your heart. And continue here. So prayer is also a way to worship. Now it's an act of worship. And it's meaningful when it's offered with conviction, love, and candor. And in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, on chapter 28, the whole chapter talks about prayers. Talks about different kinds of prayers and situations, things you can use in your prayers to ask for help for other people, for yourself, or in different situations. Someone is about to die, what to say. So there are lots of prayers, and it's really helpful and good. And we've been studying those during the meetings on Tuesdays. And again, so good deeds are the best prayers. So the law of work, yes, it's a law. But let's define work here. We're not talking about just professional work, right? It's every sort of useful occupation. So whenever we're helping someone or we're doing something in order for the greater of us or other people, we're doing work. And the necessity of work, it is a law of nature. That's how we develop our intelligence. And without work, we would just remain like children intellectually, because we wouldn't develop our intellectual. Yeah. So then they have a question, but how about rich people? Some of them don't have to work. They have a lot of money, right? But that doesn't, they still have, or they are not exempt from the obligation of becoming useful to others. And even more, because let's say some of them have more time because they don't really have to work to buy the bread, but they have a lot of time. And we are always responsible for making ourselves useful according to our abilities. So if we have time, we should be using the time in a good way. If we have money, we should be using money in a good way. It's not the same time for money. It's how we use what we have. That makes a whole difference. Limit of work. So there is limit of work. We don't have to work all the time and be tired that we cannot even do anything else. That's not the idea. So we have our strength. We know ourselves. We know we have to respect our body. And also we have the right to rest. Good, right? So it's a right. All of us have the right to rest. Yeah. Because the rest restores the strength of the body. So we need to work, but we also need to rest and give us this to ourselves. And regarding time, so if I have authority, people who have authority and misuse, they commit one of the worst mistakes. Let's say if I have a team, my boss somewhere, and I make my employees work a lot, all the time. I don't give them a break. So then I'm going against the divine law. So everybody should work and rest and have this time for themselves. So the more authority someone has, the greater the responsibility. So the more people you have, like they say, like under you, let's say in a company, the more responsibility you have, because you're responsible for other people's lives. And you're influencing directly. So abuses are against the divine law. All kinds of abuses are against the divine laws. And the strong should always assist the weak, the elderly, children, or people incapable of work. That's why we're here, because sometimes we can work, but sometimes we're sick. So, whenever we have the strength, we should work and we should help the other, and vice versa. Rights to retire. Yes. So we can work, but we have to rest and retire. We are allowed. So we should never, although it's okay to retire, of course, and rest because we worked a lot, we should never stop studying and learning. We don't have to just stop in time and just don't do anything else. Everything we acquire in this life, we will use in other lives, right? Because we don't believe in just one life. There is more. So the more we can acquire, the more we can study, the more we can learn, the better prepared we'll be for the next life, or maybe the life in the spiritual realm. And that also be part of our spiritual baggage. We'll just carry with us. And then in the book they talk about education, how some people, let's say, they don't have work, or because of the economy, the crisis, they lost their work, or they don't have work, but they never saved money because they were never taught to save money. So in this point, they say that we as a society, we are so behind in education, and this will make a lot of difference on people's lives. So even, let's say, we go through crisis, we go through all sorts of trials and tests, but if we have education, if we know how to prepare ourselves for when the time comes, then we wouldn't have a lot of people unemployed, or that depending on the government. If they, let's say, knew how to save money, maybe how to acquire another skill through going to some education system. So we as a society, we need to provide like basic things for people so they can stand up for themselves. It was really interesting because we need to do more about that. Law of reproduction. So this is also a law, and of course we live on a material place, on a material world, right? So without reproduction, the material part would end very, very speedy. So we need people to reproduce. About the evolution of races, they also talk about it's very natural that some races will eventually disappear, and it's okay, and others, more evolved, will take place. And also most of the spirits on earth, so we are not, all of us that are here right now, it's not our first time here. We're just not created like yesterday. we were probably here when this was a primitive world, and we are evolving with planet Earth. So we come back to improve ourselves through new physical experiences. That's why we need reproduction, so we can keep coming. Whenever we live, there is another spirit who will come and incarnate here, and will have the chance to improve themselves. And then they talk about obstacles to reproduction, that anything that interferes with reproduction is contrary to the general law. God gave us power of thought and action. So we're not like animals who do everything by instinct. We think, we can rationalize, we can choose things based on our knowledge. So we should always use our knowledge for the general good and never abuse it. So for example, we should never limit reproduction of some species or other species without some good reason. We should never abuse the power we have and the knowledge we have. Also, I talked about that. And it's the duty of all beings to help in every way we can help to further progress. Also, like scientific improvements, for example, vegetables and animals, are not contrary to the law of nature. If they are helping with progress, it's okay, it's good, because everybody, we're all here, we have different talents, and we all need to help progress the others with our talents. That's why we see a lot of diversity, because every single person is a piece of the puzzle. We all need to kind of connect and work together to build the big picture. Then about reproduction, they talk about marriage, and that represents more evolved stage in human development. It's progress. The fact that people can get married is progress, because it also requires, it's a commitment of two people. It shows cooperation and mutual commitment to a partner. And the abolition of marriage would return us to the life of the animals, because animals don't think, they don't commit to anyone, they just do whatever is their instinct. But we are better than that, right?
We should.
But then they talk also about the civil marriage. Can it be dissolved? Yeah, so civil marriage, it's human law. So for God, what really matters is the law we have for other people and our commitment. We don't need like paper, right? And then they talk about celibacy. So those who choose celibacy from selfish motives fail to perform their duties in the social order, because we need to give the opportunity for other spirits to come to this planet, so they can have their trials and their experiences. And I thought it was interesting in the book they ask about, but how about if there's too many people, what is going to happen? Right? Like everybody has children and a lot of children, but they say that the natural law will take care of the balance. God would never allow something that's worthless to happen. So if it happens, it's okay, and there is a higher control that we don't know about, but there is. The law of preservation. So here they talk about the instinct for self-preservation. So it's something that it's in us. And why? Because all of us are necessary to the works of providence. So if we were to think, if we were not afraid of danger, right, we would maybe die before we should. So that's why we carry in ourselves this instinct to self-preservation. And everything, let's say, if God gives us this instinct of self-preservation, it means it will always give us also the means to do something. If we have something, we always have the means. So God would never instill the will to live in us without furnishing us with the means to survive. And basically it's through work, the way we survive. And also whenever we feel we need to protect ourselves. So Earth provides us with everything we need, everything that is essential. But we always make excessive demands. We want more and more, and shoes and purses, and we want to do everything and buy everything, right? So everything that's really essential, it's provided by Earth, but sometimes what we need is not exactly what we want, right? Or vice versa. So we need to learn how to be satisfied. And when we learn this, and here they say, the reasons why there is not enough for everybody. Why? Because selfishness of those who control the means. Or sometimes it's also the needy's own negligence and lack of effort. So it's not just one or the other. It might be the combination in most cases. So it's not that Earth doesn't provide us with everything we need. It's some people take more than they should. And then the other provides, and people are like, So that's against the divine laws. We should always take what we need, not everything. And also this instinct, it's like a defense against dangers and sufferings. Common sense is the key here, and also to really think what I really need, not just what I want. It feels like sometimes like we are like children or teenagers, right? We are so entitled to want everything and do everything. Continuing on the law of preservation, so more people equals more sources of labor. So it's not just because, oh, there's more people, how are we going to accommodate everybody, how are we going to feed everybody? No, more people equals more labor. So if we have more people, we should get everybody to work. And then they talk about, there were a lot of improvements through the efforts of philanthropists and scientists in the means of survival, like agriculture and techniques, the way they, plant plants and generate like food, which I don't understand, but I know there is that. Enjoying the fruits of earth. So it's also our right to enjoy the fruits of earth, everything that is available to us. But the idea is just to preserve our life, just to get what we need. And there are limits of pleasures. So again, they are set by our real needs. So this is what we can take to measure where we are, by just thinking about what's really necessary. That's it. It's very simple. We are the primary victims of our own overindulgences. So if you think about vices and passions and food, and when food is good, but when you eat a lot, then you don't feel well, right? Drinking is good, but you drink a lot, then you don't feel well. So excesses, again, are against the laws of God. But we also have the duty to keep our health and strength. So we need to eat, we need to take care of our bodies. And that's okay. And people who live at the expense of others, exploiting them, cannot even be considered civilized. In the book, that's what they said. Self-imposed suffering. So they explain that if it's done because the person think, oh, I'm going to be purified if I do something like, I don't know, something like that, self-imposed suffering. We don't have to suffer, especially if you think you're going to be purified, or they say, this is wrong, this is selfish. The true sacrifice is really to endure hardships for the sake of others. If you're doing it because of you are helping someone, you have some sacrifices, then it's okay, because then you are helping. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no point. Why would you suffer without a reason? So, in the eyes of God, really, it doesn't mean anything. So what really means is do good to others, and your value will be greater. It's much better. And then, law of destruction. When I first learned about this, I thought, weird. How come destruction is a law? It didn't make sense until I started studying, and we learned in the course. The first year we learned about the laws, and I thought it was really weird, the law of destruction. But they say like destruction is really, it helps transformation and renewal. It's not just for the sake of destruct something. It's something that will improve. So the purpose is really establish the balance in the population of the species and transform matter. And just as a reminder, what really dies or it's destroyed is just the physical. It's just the matter. It's not our soul, our spirit is indestructible. So we're just talking about destruction of matter. And the more materialized a planet is, more destruction there will be.
When you talk about destruction by God,
it's a law of nature. Nature. Yeah. Let's say
main cause.
Tornadoes.
Even like animals or tornadoes, calamities, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So the law of self-preservation prevents premature destruction. So again, there is always time for destruction. There's always, but that's why we have this instinct of self-preservation. So it doesn't happen before it should happen when it's related to human beings. So it's there to prolong our lives in order to fulfill our tasks. That's why we have this instinct. And they talk also about necessary destruction. The destruction is not, it only is only necessary when we need transformation. It's not just for pleasure or just for entertainment. So this is abuse of the law. It's the other side of the law. So all destruction beyond the limits of the necessary violates God's laws. And we will be held accountable for abusing the freedom we were given. And then here we talk about the natural calamities, like tornadoes and all, like floodings, all these things we see. And they talk about it, and they say, those bring about transformations, and this will speed our progress. Whenever we see that it's not a good thing, we always have that sentiment, that feeling, right? Because we see the people, we see what's happening, but they say it helps. Sometimes it's a blessing, but it's hard to see as a blessing, right? It accelerates the development of a better order that otherwise wouldn't come under our interest. And everything happens for a reason. And we cannot judge the situation, we cannot judge the victims. All we can do is pray or try to help whenever we can. People might be going through expiation, they might be going through a trial, like a new test, or it might be their mission, we don't know. We're never supposed to judge anyone. Also, they continue talking about calamities that give us opportunities, like exercise our intelligence. How can we make it better so this thing doesn't happen again? How can we try to, see in advance? And prevent, right? Also, it demonstrates our patience and resignation. Each affected person has something to learn. Even whoever is just watching on TV, we have something to learn. How are we reacting? What are we doing with that information? We're always learning, right, from any experiences. And also, it's our duty as brothers and sisters to help whenever possible. But the best course of action, if you are in a situation, or when we are in a situation like that, is resignation and acceptance of a higher purpose. And as we develop scientifically and accumulate experience, we will be able to prevent calamities. And I thought that was like a hope for us. And so then they continue talking about wars. Those are man-made calamities, so they're not like natural. It shows the dominance of the animal over the spiritual nature. And they say there will be a time when we will learn the real meaning of justice and live like brothers and sisters. It's still far away, but we're going to get there. And the murder, cruelty, and capital punishment, those that bring destruction, are all against God's laws. This is like a premature destruction. Like wars, they are caused by our imperfections. And there is no justification in the law of destruction for those kinds of actions. So human laws are not there yet, but eventually we will catch up with the divine laws. Again, cruelty is never necessary, and we will be accountable for any atrocities we commit, and any compassion we show will be rewarded. And like those are like Jesus' teachings. Love your enemies, forgive, and ask for forgiveness. Now another law, social law. So we're all social beings. We live in society, and social interactions are essential part of our life. We're destined to evolve. The best way to evolve is really helping and sharing and being with people, like having relationships. Whenever we are just I don't know, in a mountain, just by ourselves, there's no interaction, there's nothing to learn or to study, or there's no one to fight or love, right? It's much easier. So when we are with other people, that's when things happen. Those are the opportunities. So absolute isolation is contrary to the law of nature. And when we are isolated, our mental and physical faculties will degrade. If we don't use them, they just will degrade. Like if we don't use our muscles, right, they will just get weak and weak and weaker. So the same thing. And so if isolation may be lived out of self-centeredness, which is not good, but unless chosen in order to work for the benefit of the society. So let's say someone just tried to isolate themselves and go study, or is, I don't know, studying some theory and elaborating something for the good of humanity, then it's okay because it has a purpose. It's not just to isolate and don't relate to anyone else. So it's a different intention. And if we think about our gifts of expression, for example, speech, we talk, right? So those are evidences that we are social beings. We talk. Who are we going to talk to if we're not supposed to interact with other people, right? So it's like a clue. Yeah. So social interaction is necessary to evolution, and our family ties, our father, sister, mother, this is the basis for life in society. This is the nucleus, right? And the purpose of living together is God wants humans to learn to love each other. That's the goal. Easy. Law of progress. So humanity progresses constantly and cannot go back to its infancy. So we're like in a steady progress. Sometimes we see the progress, sometimes we don't, but there is always progress. And the drive to progress is it's an internal impulse. And then they talk about also the difference between moral progress and intellectual progress. So we see, I think, as two wings, or they need to be in balance. But sometimes we learn a lot, so our intellectual is progressing, but then our moral, not so much. We have always to kind of try to balance those things. But with time, we'll catch up on those. So the difference, one leads to the other. So intellectual progress leads to moral progress. The more we know, the more knowledge we have, the more we can discern, we can choose, we can make better choices for us and for the others. And the moral consciousness and intellectual capacity will come into balance, but only in the long term. And also progress is a living force. No one can stop the march of progress. There are like the biggest obstacles to moral progress are our pride and our selfishness. That's what prevents us from progressing. And progress is a natural right, and it's granted to everyone. Nations and complete progress is our final objective. So we're going towards that. And nations and individuals, they progress step by step. It's not like from day to night and everything. It's always a gradual process. So nations in which social laws do not favor the education of the mind and heart disintegrate. And the reason, only knowledge dissipates darkness, and only love eliminates selfishness. I thought it was such a nice word. And civilization. So it's also an indication of progress, but it's only partial. Why? Because there are many flaws in civilization still. But the moment we eliminate all the wrongs it has brought it, then we'll make more progress. But it's a step forward in our evolution. The human laws, also they're progressing. They're not there yet, not perfect, but we're getting there. But we still need the human laws. Why? Because societies, they have particular demands, so we need legislation to have order. But unfortunately, this legislation has often been compromised by personal biases and desires. I guess we see that everywhere, right? Unfortunately. But as progress takes place, these flaws will gradually be removed from the codes of justice. And here it shows how the human laws are still in progress, while natural laws are immutable. They don't change. They don't need to be perfected. And when the majority of Earth's population has achieved a higher moral state, our planet will be like a magnet for good spirits.
Oh wow. Good. Right? Almost there.
It depends on us.
Yes.
Law of equality. All rights for all. Yes. So they talk about many types of equalities, which is also like a natural. Before God, we are all the same. We're created the same. Why are we not equal then? What happened? So the sun shines for all. We're all governed by the same natural laws. But we see inequality of talents, we see differences, we see diversity. So the differences are the result of our experiences, and also they show our willpower. So depending on our willpower and what we've been through, we have different talents, and we're different as a person. And they say this diversity is absolutely necessary, and each individual contributes to God's plans. And we're all equal by birth or in death. Social differences. Social differences are created by humans. They're not created by God. But as pride and self-centeredness are gradually eliminated from Earth, social differences will disappear. And then the only remaining inequality will be of personal merit. So there will still be some inequality, but it will be due to our merits. It's not something else happened to me. It's because I did or I did not. I choose or I didn't choose something. It's based on my free will. And people who use up their social position to oppress others are to be deplored. And sadly, we know there will always be consequences. And also, they talk about the economic equality. Again, absolute equality of wealth is something impossible due to the diversity. But we should all have basic needs. And everyone should have a necessary to lead a dignified life. About wealth and poverty, which are trials. And then we ask ourselves, why some of us are rich while others are poor? Those are different kinds of trials. Both are trials. And usually we choose them before we reincarnate. We choose to be either poor or rich because we know we need to learn, or we need to test ourselves on some values. So we choose that. And both trials are difficult because poverty often incites rebelliousness against God. So it's also a trial in that way. So we're tested in different ways. So wealth, it can lead to excesses. Also, the poor among us are tested for resignation, and the rich for the use they make of their wealth. The greater our means and power, the more obligations we have to fulfill. Men and women. So we're equal before God, and God gave physical strength to one sex in order to want to assist the other, not want to abuse the other. And we play different roles according to our characteristics. Women are more perceptive to inner feelings, while men are usually more driven by external stimuli. But we should be all equal before human laws, as we are before God's laws. And in some societies, women are still considered inferior. And it's still because there is abuse by the strong to the weak. Still, it's not in balance. It's not according to law of God. Law of liberty. Freedom. Yes. So they say there's no absolute freedom. But why? Because if there's two people in a room, now I have to respect the other people. In that way, there's no absolute freedom. We have to respect the other person. Slavery. This is, of course, it's an excess, and it's the absolute subjection of any human being to another is contrary to the law of God. All abuses will disappear with progress. Here is the only place we're really, really free in our minds. So freedom of thought. So there are no obstacles. We can enjoy unlimited freedom, but we are also responsible for our thoughts. We have free will, but there may be consequences. But God alone has full awareness of our thoughts, and deplores or approves them according to the divine justice. And we have free will as well, which is the freedom of action. And without free will, we would be just machines, right? So it's a good thing. And then we learn about fate, that there's no such thing as fate, or that's what we believe in Spiritism. What maybe something similar to fate that we could consider is our choices before we reincarnate. There is a plan when we are in the spiritual life, and we think about what we need to work on, and we make plans, but it's just a plan. Whenever we come to Earth, we still have the option to follow the plan or make changes. By our choices, we're all the time making changes. So in that way, there's no real fate. The only thing we can be sure that one day we will die. Our body, our material body, not our soul, of course. And then a lot of events are the result of actions that we take on Earth by our own free will. They are not fate. So I think Tanya always uses this example. We eat a lot of feijoada, we eat a lot. And then we are sick the other day. It's not fate. It's something you just did. It's just action and reaction. So if you burn a finger, this is not fate. And they say the only things that are like planned before we incarnate are the things that are significant to our lives, like significant events, things that will profoundly affect us. Those are the kinds of things that is our like plan or trials. Nobody is predestined to commit a crime. At the time of the crime, we always have our free will and our intelligence to choose yes or no, to do it or not. Even though there are a lot of people maybe trying to convince you, do it. At the time of the crime, we always have the chance to not do it, and this will be always a test to not do it. God wants us to not do it, to succeed, but sometimes we fail, but it's part of our progress. And then they talk about also this material life, things that happen on our material life, and acts of moral life. So what happened to us, we have no control, right? But acts of moral life can be no fate, because those are based on our free will, on our choices. We have chosen our trials. The more difficult it is, and the better you bear it, the higher you rise spiritually. The law of justice, love, and charity. So this is, they say, it's the most important law. It encompasses all the other laws. So if you want to just think about one, because there are many and we're overwhelmed, let's just focus on this one. So the most important law, and this sense of justice is so natural that if we see something that we see it's injustice, we feel like, oh, bad. We feel really bad when we see injustice. So this is something, it's our inner feeling, sentiment. And what is justice? It's really to just respect the rights of the others. That's it. Many, and a lot of things we do are not really in the domain of human law, but they may be against the divine laws. Right? The way we treat people, what we think about other people, what we think about ourselves. Are we being nice to ourselves? Are we not treating ourselves well? Or thinking bad things about us? Those are all things that are in the eyes of God, but not the human laws. And those, they will be judged in the tribunal of conscience, which is our conscience. No one will be judging us. We'll be the judge when the time comes. And the rights established by the human laws are not always consistent with true justice, but we're going to get there eventually. And the fundamental principle of justice. This is like an old principle. Do to others as you'd have them do to you. It's not complex. It's very simple. If we think, how should I behave? What should I do? What choice should I make? Think about if that person is doing the same thing for you or to you. How would you like that person to behave? What would you like that person to say or do? It's the same thing. It's just applied to the other person. So, so the desire to see your own rights respected is our best guide. And we should just wish for others what we would wish for ourselves. And this notion of justice lives in our conscience. And more about rights. So the most important right we have is right to life. This is the most one. And then also we have the right to accumulate wealth. But how? So if it's the result of honest work and all the product of your honest work is your rightful property and you are entitled to defend it. But if whatever you acquired, it was because someone else is suffering now, or it was someone else's and we just stole, then this is not our right. So if the product of our work just benefits ourselves, then it's just satisfying our desires and it's selfish. So we also need to always be careful with the intentions. This is not something people see, but we know. It's here, right? It's the intention means a lot before divine laws. And then Jesus' message again, love of one's neighbor. So Jesus meant by this word love, really it's just compassion for everyone, tolerance for their imperfections, because we are also imperfect. So we should be tolerant to others, and forgiveness of all offenses, because we also want forgiveness from other people. So this love that Jesus is saying, love your enemies, love your neighbor, it's not the same love, of course, as the love you have for your mother or for your children. It's just the love as brothers and sisters. It's respect. And charity, in the sense used by Jesus, means seeking out those in need without waiting for them to hold out their hands. So it's more than just giving money to the beggar. It's really not even waiting for him to beg for money and help him before he gets to that situation. So we as a society, we are still failing in that regard, because many people, they need to go and beg for money because they don't have the basic needs. They don't have the basic assistance. And the charitable person is gentle, benevolent, and pays as much attention to the way a need is used as to the need itself. So the way we do things, the way we talk to people, it makes a big difference. And then, and I think we're almost done. And the motherly and filial love. So it's a virtue, it's an instinctive feeling. And in the human race, it lasts throughout life, even after life, right? We know many testimonies where a mother is watching for their children or is concerned. So even if our body died, we still carry with us all the relationship, all the love, all the connections we have with other people. So it survives death and follows the life of the child from beyond the grave. So it's a really powerful love or sentiment. But sometimes we will also see there's the absence of this motherly love. And what is that? Why does that happen? It's a trial chosen by the spirits of the child, or an expiation. Let's say that child was a bad parent or a bad child in another life. So we never know, and we should never judge. And how to be in harmony with the natural laws. So be charitable, seek those who suffer in privacy. So what one hand is doing, the other one doesn't know about it, right? So be tolerant with the flaws of your fellow human beings. Instead of despising the ignorant, enlighten them. Be gentle and considerate to those around you. Treat everyone the same. And when we are in harmony of the laws of God, then we won't suffer. Then we'll be really happy. That's it.
Sounds good.